Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name's Mark Keith. I'm with the Research Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I am the parent person for the project. I always get this question every time I do a workshop. This is not a deaf-specific workshop. This is a family workshop. Parent issues are parent issues are parent issues. So don't let the name scare you. We're not just specific to the deaf and hard of hearing world, okay? There are, from housekeeping, there are some handouts in the back. If you guys, they're for this session, if you want to grab them, that'd be great. Most of them are for you to take with you and use. I have two that I really would like you to help me with. One's an evaluation form that's really important to our project because we are a state-funded discretionary project, so this shows them I'm not like taking their money and going to the Bahamas or something. So the second one is a two-parter called Plan for Change. That's for you to write down something out of this session that you can take home with you and use to help encourage independence with your child. I've also got some papers floating around to sign in if you don't mind. It just, again, it helps me with our documentation. To tell you a little bit about myself, I've been doing this job now for 17, 18 years, something like that. So long time professionally. I am a parent myself. I have a young man who is now 29 years old. He is deaf, and he also has chorioathetoid cerebral palsy. So as we go through this session, I will talk a lot about my family because I'm going to throw anybody under the bus. It's going to be us and not somebody else. I will tell you right off the bat, I am probably one of the worst helicopter parents you ever know. So I'm constantly in therapy for this, and these sessions help me. Even at his age, there is still that desire to hover, to help, to rescue, instead of letting them survive, learn, make mistakes, do the things they need to do. If any of y'all have any questions as we go, feel free to ask them, please. I don't mind. I'm getting a little bit older, and the truth is, if you wait until the end, I might not remember what I said 5 minutes from now, okay? So feel free. If you need to leave or come back, that's fine. Nothing, that stuff doesn't bother me at all. So we're good? Okay, quick questions. Everybody here parents? Are y'all parents? Yes? What about any staff, professional staff? Good, parents, great. So the first thing I want you to do is I've got a video I really want you guys to watch, pay attention to, follow the directions, and then we're going to talk about it, and I'll tell you why I want you to watch it.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
How many of you did not see the gorilla? Be honest, please. So about a third of you. I do this in almost every workshop I do, and usually it somewhere runs between a third, a half, sometimes two-thirds do not see the gorilla. So if you didn't see it, it's okay. What? I'm sorry?
In all fairness, I've seen that one before.
Oh, you've seen that one before? Okay. So you're cheating a little bit on me.
I didn't even count because I knew it wasn't about that.
Okay, cool. I'm showing this to you for a reason. One of the issues we run into, parenting, as you know, is a complex process. Lots of issues, problems, circumstances, positives, negatives, all going on at the same time in your world. It's very easy to become so focused and drilled down on one thing that you have a tendency to lose sight of the bigger picture of what's going on with your child. I've done it in IEPs. I've gotten so focused on one issue that I'm missing these other things that are really important over here. Okay? The only reason I'm showing you this is to be aware of that as you work with your child, as you work with school, as you work with everybody around you in terms of dealing with your child, his child's needs, encouraging independence. My dad used to always have an expression that sometimes you'd lose sight of the forest because of the trees. That's what this is. You get so focused on the individual trees, you forget you're in a big forest. Remember the forest, okay? Now, if you didn't see the gorilla, that just means you are one of those people who can focus down so hard that you block out everything else. So it's okay. That can be a very good thing, but be aware. So, let's talk about letting go. Do you spend a major part of your time thinking about your child's safety? Just throw your hands in the air if you do. Yeah. Does that outweigh everything else? Some of you? Do you hover constantly? This is really bad, especially for the little itty bitties, because you just want to protect them so badly. Do you rescue your child? Be honest. Yeah. Do you resist encouraging independence? Anybody? Some? If you have a child with special needs, this is a normal reaction. It's a normal reaction for a parent, and it's one that you've got to resist. The reality is, the more we over-shelter and over-protect, the less that child is ready as they grow older to participate in the world in general. And what's your goal as a parent? To have your child be as participatory as possible in the world, to have as good and as rich a life as possible, right? That's what we all want. My wife, who is a science teacher, so she has a tendency to be a little clinical with things sometimes. When we went to our first IEP meeting, I asked what we wanted for Ian. Her response is, I want an independent tax-paying citizen. Because if he's a tax-paying citizen, it means he's got enough money, he's making enough money that he can live off of it. And if he's paying taxes, it means he's working. And if he's independent, it means he's going to be okay when something happens to both of us. I didn't think about it at the time, but you got a point. You're right. Y'all been there yourselves? You understand where I'm coming from? Okay, good. So why is this important? First off, your child's future depends on it. And I'm going to tell you something. One of the things I run across a lot, I think I'm going to talk about this later on, but I have a tendency just to go where I want to go on this, is people who don't have children with disabilities or aren't in this world have a tendency to pity. Nothing does damage more than pity when it comes to this. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have empathy, but what I mean is a teacher cutting grades. So, I'll go ahead and give them the B when they should have had the C. That doesn't teach them how to work. Or rescuing them in situations that they can really problem solve out of or figure out how to get out of themselves because I feel sorry for them because they have a disability. It's a big war, and we fight that all the time. We did with our son growing up. And I know you guys probably too. Yeah, it's okay once in a while. I get that. I mean, it's okay. So it's that balancing act between not insulting or hurting somebody's feelings, but also saying, let's start from a point that we presume competence, we presume that the child is capable of doing something, and then step back. If you're starting back here, it's a lot harder to catch up than it is to start here and work your way back a little bit, right? Your future depends on it. Do you really want to be 80 years old and having a 60-year-old child living with you? I don't. I love my son to death, but I don't want him living with me when he's 60 and I'd be 88, 85, 88. But my point is, that's telling me he's not ready to live by himself if I'm not there. That's hard. That's scary. So, your child needs to develop his or her independence. The other piece of forcing independence and working to develop independence, it helps them develop his or her social skills. Again, this is a big issue because too often we find, and I know more and more, we're moving to a world where kids are educated in the general ed classrooms, in the regular classroom settings, but we still have self-contained classrooms or environments where we have small groups of children with disabilities being educated together. or spending a lot of time together. In those situations, children sometimes have a tendency to create their own cultural norms. Those norms don't always fit the general society's norms. So it's something we have to be careful and watch for. My biggest one is it will help your child learn perseverance. If your child can learn to persevere, I don't care how smart you are or anything else, if you can persevere, you have a much better chance of succeeding than just about anything else in the world. Ian is, my son's name's Ian. Ian is, I told you he's 29, 8 weeks, born 8 weeks early, 6 weeks NICU, 2 weeks on a vent. Didn't know if he was going to live that first year. You know, I'm sure some of you all been there. Didn't know if he was ever going to get through school to begin with, okay? We got to middle school going, let's hope he graduates high school. We got to towards the end of high school and he's asking to go to community college. Gets through community college, he's asking to go to a four-year school to finish his degree, okay? You don't know what's going to happen from here to here, but the one thing that served him more than anything else, when he went to St. John's River Community College for his associate's degree. I will never forget him coming home after the first set of tests that they had in his college classes and telling me, oh, this student dropped out, or this student dropped out, and they were all friends of his who were deaf or had other disabilities. Why? Well, the teacher doesn't like me, I failed. I failed my test, so the teacher doesn't like me, so I'm just going to quit. That's not having perseverance. It took Ian 6 years to finish his associate's degree. Why? It took him 3 semesters to pass English composition. The proudest thing for me, one of the proudest things for me was when he got through the second semester, failed it, and went back the third time. He got a C and passed it. He took fewer classes because of the cerebral palsy. It just slows him down. But the fact is, he had a goal at that point, and he was not going to quit. One of the things that helped him immensely, we ran into a professor who was deaf on a trip out west. He was at a college somewhere in California. I don't remember now. It's been so long. But he just sat him down. They were talking. He sat him down and told him, it took me 4 years to get an associate's, another 4 years to get a bachelor's. It took me, basically he was in his mid-30s by the time he finished his PhD, but he said, I had a goal. All that matters is, it doesn't matter how many steps back you slide, as long as you keep working forward. As long as you're moving, that's what's important. You will eventually get there. Don't ever quit. That made a huge impact on him. So think about that with your kids. And I'm going to tell you something. Watching them fail, watching them not succeed is one of the hardest things you are ever going to do. And fighting down that desire to step in and rescue every time. Now, I'm not talking let them fall off the third story of a building because, oh, they're going to make a mistake. Let's let him. No, rescue them in that situation. But, you know, I mean, the normal life things. Tying shoes. He learned how to tie his shoes. It took him God knows how many attempts and trials. But he was determined to do it, as opposed to me stepping in and always doing it or buying, you know, it's something he wanted to learn how to do. Okay? Encourage that perseverance, because it's how your child's going to learn how to succeed. Now I have another little video, and one thing I want to talk to you about too is, remember, keep in mind, dads and moms approach the world very differently. We are very different animals. So this is just kind of a funny representation of it. Moms, and I have a whole session for moms on understanding dads and why we behave like we do. It basically revolves around the whole topic that we never evolved while you guys did. But the bottom line is remember, there sometimes are different approaches too. Be willing to let everybody try different ways of doing things. But I think you'll enjoy this. I thought it was funny. Our team thought it was funny.
We're gonna change your diaper, buddy.
Oh, you think stench is your ally. You merely adopted the stench. I was born in it, molded by it. I am your father.
Honey, what are you doing? All right. lucky baby, aren't you? You left quite a surprise for Mom, dear. Yes. Look at these adorable new little diapers I got. Which one should we use?
The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign. Please take your seats. Roger, Flight 807, approaching runway 7 level.
Buddy, come on. Buddy, it's tickle time!
Oh no, he's awake. Does he really not hear this? We'll be right back.
Where's Mom? Hey, can you guys keep it down here? I'm trying to get a full 8 and it's just a little hard to sleep with all the noise. You know what I mean?
Mwah. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. You think that's bad? Well, you know what happened to me? So I leave the diaper bag in the car because I was just running in real quick for like 2 items.
Thank you for calling 911. What's your emergency?
My baby exploded out of both ends, everywhere.
I sure wished I had a bird pop at least, because like as soon as I got in there, he like threw up all over the place. Didn't you? Yes.
Sir, this line is for life or death emergency
Oh no!
only.
Oh
You
no!
hang up,
This
switch
is a
to
life or death
callers.
emergency.
I felt so bad for him. So then I go to the checkout line and he blows through his diaper. Oh, I ended up having to try to clean him up the best I could and change him in the car.
My wife is not here right now.
Sir?
I am literally gonna die from this smell.
Sir?
I need you to come help me.
Yeah, I wished I had a change of clothes for me too. I had to spot clean my shirt with water from my water bottle.
Good luck, sir. I'm gonna hang up now.
Don't hang up. No, I can't clean this up.
Sir, I'm gonna hang up now.
By the time we got home, he had blown through his diaper for like the 6th time. I don't know how he had anything left in him.
Hello? Hello?
So does any of that look familiar to you guys at all? I will tell you the first time I changed a diaper, I'd never changed a diaper in my life. It was like, oh my God, what is this? Thank God for it was a woman who we were friends with in college who played softball. She showed me the softball method of folding a diaper, of putting a diaper on, which was like, Ian was allergic to the Pampers, so we had to use real diapers. But it was like lay the diaper out in the shape of a baseball diamond, bring second base down to home plate, lay the baby on the pitcher's mound, bring third base, first base, and home plate in and pin. Do not hurt the pitcher. It worked. My wife just looked at me and went, if it works, go with it. Okay, so now how much of a helicopter are you? We've talked about if you are one. Can you go without calling the sitter 10 times? Can you go out and not call the sitter 10 times? I will tell you that the first time we went out after having our son, we were so lucky. Our next door neighbor was a NICU nurse. She said, I will watch him. Go to the Chili's. It's 5 minutes from here. Get some dinner. Just get out of the house for an hour. My wife is, and this was the days before cell phones. She kept going to the front desk asking to use the phone. And it was like, finally she was like, stop calling. I'm not going to answer the phone again. You are fine. He is fine. You are fine. Just relax. Yeah, we had those, I don't know if you guys are probably mostly too young, but our first cell phone was a bag phone that you plugged into the cigarette lighter. It looked like one of those army big radios they carried on their backs. And so yeah, no cell phones. Do you follow the school bus going to school? Have you ever done that? Ian's first day, I was ready to ride a helicopter and follow him down the road because it was an hour ride from where he got picked up to the school he was going to. I was so freaked out, and you know what? He had the best time. He was doing the same thing that the big boys did, and he got an hour nap coming home from school, and he was ready to go when we got in. He was in a good mood. I was like, you know what? And that bus driver, she was like a mama grizzly bear. She'd have taken out anybody who would have tried to do anything to those kids, but I was just so uptight and so worried when there really wasn't a need. Would you let your child go out to a movie with friends? This is always a hard one, because usually it's like the first time or two that a child goes out somewhere by themselves. Think about it. Now, maybe not all children, that's going to work for all kids, okay? But there are a lot of kids that will, and it's a balancing act that you have to decide. What are you willing to go with? How are you willing to do this? Is it with a trusted friend? But these are things you really need to consider. Would you let them try playing a sport, go camping, or doing other things? Would you? Sometimes maybe. I will tell you with Ian, CP was always a concern. It was a bigger concern for us than being deaf. My best friend's older brother was deaf growing up. It was no big deal, at least to me, and same to my wife. She actually went through the interpreter program in Virginia when he was a baby. But we made a decision early on. We were not going to stop him from doing things. We weren't going to shelter him and not give him the opportunities. I played sports all through school, up through college. You get hurt sometimes. It's part of growing up. You can get hurt sitting in your own home, which he did on numerous occasions. He had more stitches at one point. He didn't walk till he was 7. So it was like having a toddler around the house. It's this tall for a while. But one of the things we tried, hippotherapy. Anybody know what hippotherapy is? Therapeutic horseback riding. It was a godsend. First time he got on a horse, we're about halfway through it, and I'm walking in front, and I'm signing to him, and he was kind of looking around, and the instructor was trying to tell him something, and I made the mistake of going to the horse, right up by the horse's head and doing this, which is give me your attention. And all I saw was the whites of the horse's eyes. I went, oh, God, that was not a smart thing. Horse came up. He went off the back end. I've got my 4-year-old laying on the ground, and they're pulling the horse away. And I go over, are you okay? He's like, the horse, where are they going? And he's like, well, the horse is not happy right now. But I'm not finished. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's. I was like, I didn't know how it was going to work, and he was like, I don't care. I'm ready to get back on the horse. And he literally did. When he was 11, before we moved to Florida, he was jumping horses. Today he still rides. We go to Yellowstone a lot on family trips, and he can't hike real well because of the CP. If you've ever been out there, it's really rocky, rough terrain. But we'll get him on a horse. We'll be 10, 15 miles up in the backcountry. And anybody know who John Wayne is? Anybody remember? I was old enough to know that, but you put him on a horse, now you have John Wayne. Last time we were out there in September, we're riding along, and the outfitters are always kind of like, CP, and you're going to put him on a horse. Don't worry about it, it'll be fine. 30 minutes in, he goes flying past me at a gallop, no hands. He's got his camera like this, using his legs, and he's laughing at me. And I'm going, thank you. So, I mean, that's where we are. But he's something he can do. He wanted to try scuba diving. Couldn't hold a regulator in his mouth. We found a place on vacation that did the acrylic hard helmets where he could walk on the bottom. We talked to them. We worked with the company. The people who were there. They put 2 guys in the water. Now, both my wife and I are scuba divers, so we get the rules and how this all works. They put 2 guys in the water in scuba gear. It was 20 feet of very calm water. So if there was a problem, we could get him up to the surface, all that stuff. He did it, said, this was really cool. I said, you want to do it again? No, one time's fine, I'm good. But I've done it. The point is he did it. Now let me throw the big one at you. Drive a car. Would you let him drive a car? Would you let your son try driving a car? I had hair when he started learning. But we spent a year on back roads and in this found a place where they're building houses, but the economy had tanked when he was that age, so they had stopped building, so they had all the road signs, everything else in. We'd go in there and drive and practice, probably 2 months of that. And I'll never forget the day we pulled him, he would drive to the side, to the exit onto the main road, and then we would switch. I never forget the day when we pulled up to that stop sign at the main road, and he said, no. I said, drive me home. Out there? Well, yeah, where else are you going to drive? And you know what? He does just fine. He drives the interstate. He drives back and forth to church. He drives to activities, drives to work, drives to anywhere he wants to go. I'm still scared about that, like any parent would be. But you know what? It's part of life. And think about our world today. If you didn't have access to a car, how would you get to your job? Okay? I'm not saying every child can drive a car or should drive a car. I'm just saying give them the opportunities to do things if you believe they possibly can in a controlled situation, and then go from there. Find out. Presumption of competence. What about staying home for the first time? For staying home by themselves? Anybody done that yet?
And I've got to say, my daughter, I just went for built it up. This is your alone time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went for a little walk in the neighborhood. And when I got back, she said, Mom, I didn't even leave. Because sometimes she tried to stay out of the house. And she was so, we were both proud of her.
Well, that's great, you know? That's great. Anybody else had been at that age yet, done that yet? We did. I didn't know it was going to happen. Where was I? I was standing right here doing a workshop about 10 years ago. My wife showed up and walked in. We finished the workshop. I go, where's Ian? Oh, one of his friends is coming down. They stayed at home. Huh? In my head, I had this vision of a smoking crater with our golden retriever standing on the top going, I had nothing to do with this. And you know what? The two of them did just fine. They went out to dinner. They went to a movie. They came back, hung up, played games. Andy spent the night. He went on his way the next day. And it was just fine. It was just fine. But I'm going to tell you, if my wife hadn't forced me to get to that point, I would never have survived him going away to college. So the little things you do now set you up for the bigger things later. His choice in a college, his degree is geospatial science. Okay, so you know, Google Maps, Google Earth, all that stuff, that's what he does. He sees it in his head. I don't know how, anyway. His first choice of a college, there's not a lot of colleges that have those programs. His first choice was Montana State. The two grandmothers and the mother were up in arms over that one. He wound up at a college called Radford University, which is in Southwest Virginia. At least it's only 10 hours away, so we could get there. But he lived independently in the dorm. He was the only ASL student in the entire campus, only person who used American Sign Language on the entire campus, 10,000 students. And you know what? He had several girlfriends, he dated. He had a better social life than I did in college. And I found out a lot of this later after the fact, and I'm going, at one point, and I know I'm going off track, but at one point I called him because his junior year, I called him and said, I haven't gotten the paperwork for your dorm. That should have been out 2 months ago. And I'm on a video phone with him. And I'm getting this. Okay, what are we doing here? What are you not telling me? Well, the girls from the front court of the basketball team asked me to move in to be their fourth in their apartment. I'm like, excuse me? Sweetie, I'm thrilled as a dad, as a man. I'm thrilled to death for you about that. But vocational rehab helped him with his room and board. And I'm like, VR is not going to pay for you to live with 3 girls. They'll pay for you to live in the dorm. So I'm sorry, let's get you back in the dorm. It's like, okay, fine, I understand, fine. But my point being is all these little things we do from the time they're little itty bitty to the time they're adults helps those each step along the way. It gets you prepared to allow them to take that next step. Because going from hovering here when they're 3 years old to saying, fly and be free when they're 20 is not going to work. You're going to have a mental meltdown. And they're not going to be ready. Baby steps now. So anyway, and like I said, I got off track here a little bit, but if the answer to this question is no, then you need to rethink. If you don't allow your child to try, they will never have the opportunity to succeed. Always keep in mind what your ultimate goal for your child is. What is your goal? And I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm talking 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road for that child. Again, in my world, it's to make him absolutely as independent as possible so he won't have to worry about who's taking care of him, that he can do it on his own and doesn't need any of us. Doesn't mean I don't want him to want to be with us, but he doesn't need us. So I'm asking you to think about this. When you sit, and you don't have to answer, don't answer this, but just sit down and think, is tonight, tomorrow, you're leaving here later, is what you're doing today giving your child the opportunity to reach that goal? If not, how do you change? What can you do to change? First off, baby steps. Like I just said, baby steps. Stopping the hover is very, very hard. Start small, start when they're young, and do not baby. Build confidence, because when you're doing this, actually you're building confidence not just for your child, but for yourself as well. Every time you give them a little bit and they're successful, or maybe they fail and try again and eventually wind up being successful, you're learning they can and they're learning they can. It's kind of like you're growing together here. Now, how do you build confidence? Give them small chores. You know, when they're starting out, they don't need to be cutting the yard or changing the oil in the car. Maybe it's helping with putting the dishes in the dishwasher or emptying the trash or any other things like that. Something small that they can do that they can have responsibility for. Okay? Make sense? Permit them to gain, and this helps permit them to gain small levels of independence, and those, over time, those grow. Again, you expand the freedoms and also expand the chores, because what you make clear is with the chores, with a little bit of responsibility, comes more freedom. You're proving you're able to do this, so there's more here for you to be able to do. I hate to say carrot and stick, but that's kind of an apropos term here. I'm going to tell you none of this is going to be comfortable for you. And it never should be. If it ever becomes where you're so comfortable that you're not worrying about it, it means you're not pushing them. Push them to be more than they are. Push yourself to allow them. But again, as time passes, your comfort level is going to grow, so that level of uncomfortableness may be between putting the dishes in the dishwasher. You have the same level of uncomfortableness when they're driving to the store to get bread. And I will tell you, with my son, I still get scared when he drives a car. It's not so much I worry about him, I worry about all the crazies that we get on the road out here today, okay? I'd feel very comfortable handing him his passport and a credit card and dropping him in the middle of Europe and saying, get home. It's just being on the road, because we live in St. Augustine, and if you've ever seen some of the folks drive up there, it's like, oh boy. Anyway. Remember, and this is the hardest thing for me, no matter what you do, you cannot control everything. You cannot control everything. The world happens. So, you have to be vigilant, but you can't be overbearing. You know, kind of act as that, like a pinball machine, you're the bumpers to keep them from falling off, from keeping the table from tilting. See where I'm going? You guys getting this? Make sense? Okay. And again, we come back to think of what levels of independence and responsibility your child would have if they did not have any disabilities at all. That should be your measuring stick to start with and to work from that point. Okay? Making sense? Okay. I did a workshop a number of years ago on a Sunday morning here. It was my very first year. It was a dad session. And I had a guy sitting in the back, and about 15 minutes in, I was like, am I that bad? He apologized. He said he had 3 kids, and they had him up all night long. And I'm like, dude, I understand. I've been there. I understand the concern. But it was funny because the other dads in the room were just kind of, whoa, what kind of night did he have? Okay, independence versus fear. You're going to constantly have to balance this process of independence versus your fear, okay? Keep that in mind. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a balancing act. You have to find that middle ground where you can be comfortable enough to allow your child to try new things without tipping the scale one way or another to the point that you're either totally freaked out or you're just like, oh, I don't have to worry about this because we're not doing anything. You've got to conquer that fear yourself. You have got to make this work for yourselves, okay? Again, it's going to be one of the hardest things you're ever going to do, okay? And it's going to continue and continue and continue to be hard. Nobody said being a parent was going to be easy, right? But you're going to have to work hard to control your fears. And I know for me, from our family, that was I'm lucky that I have my wife because we're a pretty good balancing act of each other. Things that freak her out don't bother me in the least, but things that bother her, things that bother me a lot don't seem to bother her very much, so we can talk the other one down off cliffs, like letting Ian spend the weekend at home for the first time by himself. Because I was like, no, we are never going to. It was very hard. That was very hard for me. My wife never got in the car when we were doing driving because she said, I just can't handle the teaching to drive. It's just too much for me, okay? Balance. Find those balances. Trust. If you've got a partner, use that partner. Work together as a team. Single moms, single dads, I know it's a lot harder. Maybe you've got a friend you can bounce things off of another family member, but try to find somebody you can talk to or provide kind of a sounding board for you. That helps so you don't tilt off the edge of the world, so to speak. Remember that in the world, most of our successes are about overcoming failure. One of my favorite presidents is Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, how many of you realize, know anything about Teddy Roosevelt, his history as a young child? Teddy Roosevelt was a fairly sickly child growing up. He actually was not particularly healthy, and one of the reasons he became so active as an adult was to challenge himself to overcome that sickliness that he had as a young child. And somebody asked him one time if he had the opportunity to try something small that he knew he'd be successful at or something big that he had a good chance of failing at, what would he do? And his response was, I'd rather try something big because if I failed, I knew I'm starting to find where my limit is, but if I succeed, it means I need to try something even bigger. What fascinates me about him is one of the things that fascinates me about him, he actually survived an assassination attempt. He was shot while preparing to give a speech, went out and gave the speech for an hour and a half, and then went and had the bullet taken out. Talk about perseverance. Another one of my favorites is Alexander Graham Bell. I'm sorry, I got that. I just lost that one. Basically, who invented the light bulb? Edison, thank you. I got my names confused. I know you, thank you. I was sitting there going, wait a minute, that's not the right person. Thomas Edison was once asked what he learned from he said approximately 1,000 attempts to make a light bulb. What did he learn from those 1,000 attempts? He said, I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb, but I learned one way to make it work. So again, perseverance. I keep coming back to this word, perseverance. It is important. It is critical. Learning to try and try and try again. Be willing to let your child try things and to stretch the envelope. There's going to be surprises, there's going to be failures, and there's going to be successes, okay? That's the world. It's how we live. Even you as an adult, is your world perfect? Are there things that happen in your life that you look at and say, this is a failure? Or things that are roadblocks that you have to go through? That's our lives, really, when you think about it. We just keep chugging and get past them, trying to get to the goal. Another thing to remember is that there's more than one path in life, okay? There's more than one path in life. You look to the destination, not how you get here, not how you get there. For instance, I hate I-4. I'm seeing a lot of head nods, so yeah. I don't come I-4. It takes me 15 extra minutes coming out of St. Augustine to come all the way down to 528 and cut across on the south side of Orlando, and I miss all that traffic on I-4. It's a different way. Not the way a lot of people go, and I probably shouldn't have said anything because now some of you are going to try it and there's going to be more traffic out there. But you look for alternative routes. Just because this route is not working for somebody, maybe this route will. The point is, what's your goal and how do you get to that end point? Be willing to see the alternate routes. There's so many different ways you can get here. You know, I know most of us have a tendency to lock down that this is the way we're going to do it. My dad, loved best one. He was a great father. Couldn't argue. Could never say anything bad about him. He was an ex-Marine who became an elementary school principal. He said the Marine Corps was the best training he ever had for running an elementary school. The kids would look at me because I went to that elementary school. Oh my God, your dad looks like he's so upset today. I said, nah, that's his normal happy face. He had that buzz cut and but he was one of the gentlest people you'd ever met and believed that everything was about teaching. Everything was about teaching kids and teaching people and learning. And part of that was, okay, this didn't work. How else can we do this? Okay? That went a long way with me in helping me become what I am. I will tell you that this was not the career path I ever thought I was going to get into, because when I went to college, both my parents, I have an uncle who was, both my parents were school principals, uncle who was a superintendent of schools in Hillsborough County. My grandmother was a teacher. Every aunt, uncle, relative I had, it was like a staff meeting every time we had Thanksgiving dinner with family. And look where I wound up. I'm in education. My sister's a teacher too, by the way. It was a path that just seemed, but I took a different route and wound up here. Okay? Now, how many of you guys like Star Wars? Anybody? Really? Not that many? Okay. So, in Star Wars, who's the biggest philosopher? Yoda. I saw this is the second to last movie they did. I'm sitting in the theater with my wife, and they play this particular scene, and I'm going, oh my God, I got to get a copy of this somehow for this workshop. I had a friend who bootlegged a copy out of Japan. It was captioned in Japanese. I'm like, dude, I cannot use this. I work for the state of Florida. They will hang me if they figure out where I got this thing. So they finally got released where I could actually pull it off of YouTube and use it legally. So I want you to watch this scene. I'm going to move it forward because it's a long one and I couldn't figure out how to download.
Skywalker, still looking to the horizon. You're here now. The need in front of your nose. I was weak, unwise. Lost Ben Solo, you did. Lose Rey, we must not. I can't be what she needs me to be. Heeded my words not, did you? Pass on what you have learned. Strength, mastery, but weakness, folly, failure also. Yes, failure most of all. The greatest teacher, failure is. Luke, we are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters.
I'm sorry the captioning in that is not particularly good, but the point, what's Yoda's point? Failure's the best teacher in life. It teaches you to get up and do it again and keep trying. I mean, like I said, I saw my wife, would you please be quiet? I'm watching the movie. I don't need you talking about work right now. So anyway, I figured if I threw Yoda in here, you guys would go, hey, I may not be the smartest thing, but it's Yoda. Yoda says it, it's good. So hopefully, as an adult, your child will be as independent as they possibly can. And hopefully you will have overcome your fears, your concerns, your worries, and allowed them the freedom they needed to become independent while also giving them the support they needed when they failed. If you're starting late, and I've had parents in here say, oh my God, I've not been doing any of this, my kid's 14, 15 years old. You know what, you can still do it. It's harder. It's more stressful, but because you're trying to break old habits and create new ones, but you can still do it. It doesn't matter where you start. Remember that independence is going to benefit both you and your child. And that's the end goal, to get your child as independent as they possibly can be so they can live the best life they can, whatever their situation may be. And so that you, as an older adult, a senior citizen, can look back and go, I don't have to worry about my child. And when it's all said and done, it's going to give you peace and peace of mind about the future. So rules to live by. We're almost done here. I do have just FYI, for those who got handouts, I do have a couple. I want to talk about those for just a quick second, just to tell you what they are. Rules to live by. 1 day at a time. Take everything 1 day at a time. You cannot solve something that's going to happen 5 years from now, right now. 1 day at a time. Make things successful as best you can and move on. I don't have this in there, but don't spend too much time looking backwards either, because you can't change that either. You can learn from it, but you can't change it. If sometimes fear wins out, don't beat yourself up. Simply try again tomorrow. Give your child the support and encouragement in that push for independence. It's a hard road. It can be a very hard road. Do not give up. Mom and dad, do not give up. And do not let your child give up. Perseverance. And no matter how hard the task becomes, remember what you're doing is helping your child become as independent an adult as possible. That's the end game. This is Ian today. That's him in his car. This is us, actually, that's the picture on the left. That's us this past September in Yellowstone. And that's Ian on the right. He's 15 miles up on the top of a place called Antler Peak, which goes up like this, and that's not always comfortable on a horse. He was fine. We won't discuss me. I was hanging on to the saddle horn. Do you have any questions? Anything? No? Okay. The handouts. Can I borrow yours for just a minute? First, we have the 10 things to encourage independence. It's just kind of like a cheat sheet for you. Of course, please remember the evaluation form. That helps me. 6s are good, 1s are bad. Two things I really like, two little tools. Like one is called a plus delta evaluation. A plus delta evaluation. What this does, it gives you ability to sit down and look at a situation or what you're doing and say, these are the things that I liked. These are the things I wish I had done differently. Lets you be able to put it down on paper and look at things and give you a kind of a roadmap on what you need to think about as you move forward. Okay? We use these in the office. I use these in the office all the time when I'm trying to develop projects, think about stuff like this, anything, because it helps me understand where I'm at and where I need to go. The other one is SPOT. SPOT comes out of the business world. SPOT stands for Strengths, Problems, Opportunities, and Threats. It's a way to look at a situation or a problem or what's something you want to do and figure out what's going on. What's that environment look like for you? What are the strengths that you have or your child has? What are the problems that exist or you could run into? What are the opportunities that exist to expand where you're going with other resources, what are the threats that can make it all shut down. You can use this in anything from working with your child to buying a car, to planning a vacation. It's like I said, it's a very wide-ranging business tool that I just love to death because it fits very well with this kind of topic and subject. Okay? Again, feel free to take these with you, use them, copy them, give them out, whatever you want to do with them. That's why we have them. Yes? With an independence goal? Okay. So plus, I liked my child's attitude. I liked the way they approached it. They didn't want to quit. I liked that the situation created opportunities for him to be successful. I wish, in my son's case, I wish people were more understanding about how he communicates using sign language. I wish they were open and understood that just because he has CP doesn't mean he has a mental deficiency. That's something we run into a lot and always have because they think because the body moves funny that something's wrong up here. Okay? I wish that I had thought this out a little bit further so I could give you an even better description and answer of this instead of on the fly. Does that help? It's just kind of, this really worked well. These are things I wish I had done differently or could do differently.
Yeah, because I personally like, what can you control, what can't. So I tend to have my daughter what I can control.
Okay. I understand. But again, it's a way to try and break those out. But if you think the things we've talked about here and put it in play, it's a way. And if you're doing that and putting that down on paper, and this is all about you controlling things, you ought to be looking at it going, you know what, maybe I'm not doing this the right way. Maybe I need to rethink this just a little bit. So you take your knowledge, you take the information, and try and parse it and figure out where you go from there. That's what this is really designed to do. Like I said, Spot is the bigger one, taking a picture, breaking it apart, figuring out what's happening. Again, I like this. The other thing I would like for you to do, if you haven't done it, if you can find in yourself at the bottom here in these blocks, 1 or 2 things you can take out of this workshop today, write it down, that you can do to improve your child's independence and your ability to work to make your child independent. Write it down. What I also would like you to do is pull it apart and give me the back copy. You take the top one. I'm always curious to see what people say on stuff like this. So, okay? And the last thing, of course, is that evaluation form for me. So also there were sign-in sheets going around. If you manage to sign them in, just leave them at the end of the row, and I'll pick them up when we get done. I really appreciate you guys coming today, especially 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I hope you got something out of this. I hope it was useful for you and helpful, but we are done a few minutes early, but I never want to hold an audience over because then they're going, I got somewhere else to be. But thank you again for coming, and like I said, hope you got something out of it. Have a good rest of the conference and the meeting. Oh.
Yeah, I just want to let everyone know about the importance of kids being independent and also being they're individual. Like, they shouldn't have to rely on what the brothers and sisters look like. They're all individual people, so that's important to remember.
Very true. True. Thank you. Thank you again, everybody. Take care.